Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to really get into the substance of things, cut through the noise for you.
Exactly. For
Right.
listeners who want that deeper understanding, but, don't have endless time.
Right. And today we're tackling a really important topic, self-defense, specifically for women. We've got some pretty specific source material here.
We do. We're looking at self-defense for women, a simple method. It's by Bruce Tegner and Alice McGrath.
Okay.
And it's not just an article. It's presented as a home study course. It has roots going way back, 60s, 70s, but this version was digitized in 2010.
So it's got some history behind it. And these authors, Tegner especially, he was quite prolific, wasn't he? Lots of books on martial arts, self-defense.
Oh, absolutely. A huge body of work. He clearly spent a lot of time thinking about and teaching this stuff, and McGrath brought her perspective, too.
So what's the mission here? What were they trying to achieve with this specific method?
Well, they call it a simple method. The idea was to teach techniques that are, one, quick to learn, two, effective even if your attacker is bigger and stronger,
Crucial point.
and three, easy to remember under stress, which, is often the problem with more complex stuff.
Right, things that just go out of your head when you actually need them.
Exactly. They specifically contrast it with, let me see, they say showy movie judo, karate for contest, ceremonial aikido.
So not about looking fancy or winning points.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's framed as modern, practical, something women could learn at home from the book.
And how's it structured? You said a course.
Yeah, it's laid out in 10 lessons, covers preventive stuff, first, how to avoid trouble,
Smart.
then specific techniques, kicks, hand blows, how to get out of holds, and also things like using everyday objects, improvised weapons, and mental prep.
Okay, quite comprehensive within that simple framework.
Yeah, it tries to be.
All right, let's jump in then. One of the first things the book does is challenge some common ideas, right? Like this notion of women being, well, helpless.
Right off the bat, they tackle that directly. And they mention a statistic now, this is from their book. Remember that men are victims of assault about 5 times more often than women.
Wow, really? That's counterintuitive for many people, I think.
It is. And again, it's not to say the risks women face aren't serious. They absolutely are. But it reframes vulnerability. It's maybe not just about gender.
Hmm. Interesting starting point. And they don't stop there. They also kind of dismantle what self-defense isn't.
Exactly. They're very clear. It's not about becoming a, martial arts master overnight.
Or doing those crazy movie fight scenes.
Definitely not that. And it's not sport fighting. Like, karate tournaments have rules, right?
Yeah.
Real attacks don't.
Good point. No referee.
And it's not ceremonial martial arts either, or trying to punish people, or doing police work. It's purely personal protection.
Okay, so stripping it down to the essentials. I like their comparison, actually. They said learning self-defense is like learning, was it CPR or first aid?
Yeah, I thought that was a great analogy. You learn it, you hope you never have to use it.
But it's there if you need it.
Exactly. It's a preparedness skill,
No.
not a lifestyle choice, necessarily.
And that links to their point about it not being instinctive, right? Self-defense isn't something that just magically appears when you're scared.
Precisely. They argue it's a learned skill. They use examples like, well, you don't instinctively know how to swim, do you?
No. Or escape a fire, or help someone choking.
Right. You learn those things. Instruction, practice. Protecting yourself, they say, is the same deal.
So it's not about being tough inherently, it's about knowing what to do. What about the skill level they aim for? You said simple.
Very much so. They actively argue against the idea that you need years of intense training to be able to defend yourself.
Which can be really off-putting for people.
Totally. Their philosophy is that a few simple, effective techniques you can actually use under stress are way more valuable than knowing 100 complex moves you can't pull off.
Makes it feel more achievable, I guess.
That seems to be the goal. Accessible, giving you a few reliable tools.
Okay. Now, the obvious question that comes up, why not just run away? Do they address that?
They do, and they say, yes, absolutely. If you can run, running away is often the best, safest option. Get out of there. But it's not always possible, is it? You might be cornered or blocked or maybe trying to run actually makes things worse in that specific moment.
Right, so running is plan A, but you need a plan B.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
You need skills for when running isn't an option.
And this leads into something they call the vocabulary of self-reliance. What's that about?
It's about mindset, really. Shifting away from feeling helpless.
Okay.
They contrast helplessness with, well, not aggression, but assertiveness, a kind of confident self-reliance.
Like knowing you have the right to be safe.
Exactly. And maybe even saying it. They give the example of a firm, no, you're not going to hurt me. Setting a boundary, verbally, mentally.
So it's about finding that middle ground, not passive, but not overly aggressive either.
That's how they frame it. Assertiveness as the rational response. Passivity might look like an invitation. Aggression could escalate things.
Then assertiveness is just defending your space.
Right. And they suggest the language we use, even just in our heads, affects how capable we feel. So building that vocabulary of self-reliance helps build that inner confidence.
Interesting link between language and action.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's shift to the practical side. Preventive defense. Starting at home, what kind of advice do they give?
Very practical stuff. Things like definitely having a peephole or viewer in your door.
Basic, but important.
Yeah, and always using a safety chain when you open the door, even a crack. See who it is first.
Don't just swing it wide open.
Never. And linked to that, don't let strangers in, period. They stress it's okay to refuse entry. It's your space.
What if they say they're from, like, the gas company or something?
Be cautious. Their advice is tell them to wait outside while you call the company's official number, not a number they give you to verify. A legit person won't mind. If you can't verify, reschedule. Don't let them pressure you.
Good advice. And they also mentioned not advertising your home alone.
Yeah, be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Don't shout it from the rooftops or, post it online maybe. And things like having good locks, doors, windows, back entrances. Maybe get a locksmith to check if you're unsure.
Right. Multiple layers. What about lights?
Lights are a deterrent, definitely.
Yeah.
Inside and out. Maybe use timers when you're away so it looks like someone's home. Simple stuff, but it adds up.
Okay. Did they mention things like neighborhood watch?
They touch on it, but seem a bit skeptical about, like, informal escort teams.
Yeah.
Hard to sustain, maybe potential for problems. They sort of acknowledge community safety as a bigger picture thing.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move outside the home. Prevention when you're out walking or driving. What do they suggest for walking?
If you're walking alone, especially at night, they suggest walking towards the curb, away from doorways and alleys.
Creates more space.
Right. Less chance of someone grabbing you suddenly. They also mention carrying a whistle.
Ah, the whistle advice.
Yeah, but with a caveat. Don't rely on it solely. It might help attract attention, but it might not.
Okay. What if you get that creepy feeling someone's following you?
Turn and look. Directly at them. Acknowledge you see them. It takes away their element of surprise, makes you seem less like an easy target.
Makes sense. Face the potential threat. What about driving? Lots of people worry about safety in their cars.
First thing, keep your car maintained. Avoid breakdowns in bad spots.
Good practical tip.
And when driving, especially in iffy areas or at night, windows up, doors locked. Standard advice, but crucial.
What if someone tries to get your attention, like points at your tire or something?
That's a classic potential setup. Their advice is very clear. Do not stop and get out for a stranger.
Even if they seem helpful.
Nope. Drive to a safe, well-lit place first, like a busy gas station or a police station, and check your car there. Better to risk a flat tire than,
Absolutely. Prioritize safety.
Use your horn if you need to attract attention. Avoid dark, isolated parking spots. Park somewhere safer, even if it's a bit further to walk.
Okay, so it's all about awareness, caution, not being afraid to prioritize your safety over politeness. Now, weapons. That's always a big topic. What's the book's take?
They come down pretty clearly against relying on conventional weapons, like guns, for personal self-defense.
Why is that?
They raise a few points. One, more weapons in the community could mean more danger overall. Two, weapons aren't foolproof. They can malfunction. You might not get to it in time. It could be used against you. And three, using one might not always be practical or legal, depending on the situation.
But they do acknowledge that the debate exists,
Yeah.
right, about arming women.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They mentioned that after attacks, there are calls for women to arm themselves. Maybe police offer training sometimes. But they also know many police departments worry about more guns leading to more problems. And, well, some people just fear guns themselves, worry about accidents.
So caution is the main message regarding firearms. But they do talk about using everyday items, don't they? Improvised tools.
Yes, exactly. While they advise against depending on dedicated weapons, they're big fans of using what you have. They call them purse weapons and closet weapons.
Okay, purse weapons. Like what?
Things you might actually carry. A sturdy comb, keys, maybe a heavy lipstick case or compact, a pen, hairbrush, even a rolled-up magazine.
Huh. A magazine? How would you use that? Or keys?
Well, sharp things like a comb point or pen can be used for jabbing, like Side of the neck, maybe scratching the face, surprisingly effective distraction.
Right.
Heavier things, like that rolled magazine or a solid makeup item, can be swung to hit sensitive spots, nose, under the chin. Sharp impact. Keys held in your fist, points out, makes your jab much more pointy.
Creates an opportunity, maybe?
That's the idea. An aid, a distraction, not a guaranteed fight stopper.
And closet weapons, things at home.
Yeah, bigger things, maybe near at hand. Broom, umbrella.
How do you use a broom for self-defense? Seems a bit awkward.
They say use the handle end, not the brush end. Use it to ram or push, maybe into the body or arms. Create distance.
Okay, like a short staff.
Sort of. An umbrella, similarly. Thrusting or just holding it ready might even deter someone. They show using it to push up someone's arms while you kick their leg.
So, again, strategic use of ordinary objects as aids, not magic wands. Okay, let's get to the core techniques. The simple method itself. Kicks and handballs are mentioned early on.
Yeah, lesson 1 starts strong. They call kicking potentially the best defense.
Why is that?
Range. It keeps you further away from the attacker than using your hands. Plus, your legs are generally stronger than your arms.
Makes sense. What kind of kick?
Low kicks. They emphasize using the bottom or edge of your shoe, aiming for the knee or shin. Vulnerable targets.
Not high, flashy kicks.
No, they specifically advise against those. Less power, easier to grab your leg, throws you off balance. Low kicks are more stable, powerful, and surprising.
Surprising.
Yeah, they suggest attackers might not expect a woman to launch a determined kicking defense. Element of surprise is key.
Okay, what about hand techniques? Early lessons covered.
The open hand blow comes up right away. You might think of it as a karate chop.
Right.
But they're specific. Use the fleshy edge of the hand, thumb tucked in, not sticking out.
Okay. Where do you aim?
Sensitive spots. Nose, side of neck, under the nose, even forearm to block, or the crook of the elbow. They show different angles too, outward, backhand, upward, downward. Depends on the target.
So a specific tool for specific targets. They also mention a heel of palm blow.
Yes. Another core technique. It's a sharp, snappy thrust with the heel of your palm, not a push.
Targets.
Under the chin, under the nose again. Very sensitive areas. Relies on surprise, speed, and that focused impact.
Got it. Then lesson 2 adds more tools, like the finger pull. Sounds interesting.
It is. It's about leverage, not brute strength.
Yeah.
Trying to break a strong grip head-on is tough.
Yeah.
But if you can isolate just one finger, they suggest the little finger often and give it a sharp twist or jerk.
Ouch.
Yeah. It can be enough to break their hold or disrupt a choke because you're attacking a weak point.
Smart. Very tactical. What about the closed hand blow? Not a punch, they say.
Right. It's not like a boxer's punch. It's more about using the bony side of your closed hand, or your knuckles, to strike vulnerable areas like the nose. Focused impact, again, doesn't need huge power to be painful and disorienting there.
And the thumb press into throat. Sounds serious.
It can be. They describe gentle pressure on the little hollow at the base of the throat for, like, deterring unwanted closeness.
Okay.
But a sharper jab there could be for a more serious threat. They do add a strong warning about practicing that one carefully, obviously.
Understandable. And lower body stuff beyond the main kick. Stamp on the instep.
Yeah, using your heel or the bottom of your foot straight down onto the top of their foot. Very sensitive. Good initial move or a follow-up.
And a ball of foot kick.
A bit more precise, needs better aim. Using the ball of your foot or even your toe, maybe if your shoes allow. It's another option they include.
So a growing toolkit of simple, targeted techniques. But just knowing them isn't enough, right? The book hammers on practice.
Constantly. Physical practice is essential to make these reactions automatic under stress. They strongly recommend practicing with a partner.
Male or female partner.
Either. They say if practicing with a man, he needs to be cooperative, focused on realistic simulation, not trying to win.
Good point.
But practicing with another woman can also be really valuable, maybe less intimidating for some to start with.
And safety during practice is key.
Absolutely. Read the instructions, look at the pictures first, and they make a really important point. This isn't play fighting.
Right.
Self-defense practice needs seriousness, surprise, intent elements missing when you're just messing around with friends. It won't work the same way.
What about mental preparation? Is that just worrying about being attacked?
No, not at all. They define it as mental rehearsal.
Yeah.
Running through the techniques in your mind, visualizing how you'd react in different scenarios.
Like athletes do.
Exactly. Research shows it helps solidify the learning, makes the skills easier to access when you need them. It's active review, not anxious worrying.
Okay. Now, back attacks. A common fear. How do they address that?
Well, first line of defense is awareness again. Pay attention to your surroundings so you're less likely to be surprised from behind.
Try to turn and face threats.
Right. Don't ignore that feeling because you're scared. Face it. They even suggest practicing reacting to sounds or light touches. But if an attack does happen from behind a grab, a bear hug,
Yeah.
they have specific techniques for releases. Again, usually leveraging against weak points like thumbs or fingers, creating space to escape and counter.
Okay. What about the scenario everyone dreads? A knife attack.
Okay, this is crucial. They make a huge distinction. If someone has a knife and just wants your wallet, your purse,
Give it to them.
yes, don't resist robbery. Your safety is worth more than the stuff. However, if it seems the attacker intends to harm you, not just rob you,
Then you have to fight.
then you must defend yourself. That's their stance.
And how? What do they suggest against a knife?
Their main technique is called leaping and kicking. It sounds traumatic, but the idea is dynamic movement. You need to move explosively outside the line of the knife hand, off to the side, while simultaneously kicking hard. Shin, knee. Create distance. Incapacitate if possible.
What about trying to grab the knife, like in movies?
Absolutely not. They strongly advise against trying to grab the knife or the knife hand. Extremely dangerous, unless you have very specific advanced training.
So move, create distance, kick hard.
That's the core idea. They mention a variation if you're cornered.
Yeah.
Quick distraction, then simultaneous eye jab and push on the knife hand to create an opening to escape. But the main theme is avoid grappling with the weapon.
Got it. Very different from common portrayals. Distraction techniques also come up. How do they fit in?
They're really important. A good distraction gives you that split second you need to launch your defense while the attacker is momentarily, confused or startled.
Like yelling.
Yeah, screaming or yelling is a classic. Startles the attacker, attracts attention, can even build your own courage. They talk about maybe exaggerated gestures for some situations or more subtle things like a quick hand flick if you're really close, especially against an armed threat where a big move might be risky. And throwing things.
Throwing things.
Yeah, whatever you have. Sunglasses, keys, a book. Just to make them flinch or look away for a second buys you time.
Disrupt their focus. Okay. Finally, they mention ways to improve technical skill beyond just the basics. Is that necessary?
It's presented as optional for those who want to build more confidence or refine things, not essential to the simple method core.
What kind of practice?
Things like practicing hand blows on a swinging ball for timing and accuracy.
Okay.
Using a rolled-up newspaper as a target for practicing full-power blows safely. Practicing clicks against a ball at knee height to work on aim and balance.
So, drills to hone the skills,
They.
but they still say no formal fighting stances.
Right. They reiterate that. A natural, alert posture is better for everyday self-defense. Less provocative, more practical.
Okay, so let's try and summarize this deep dive. The essence of this simple method seems to be self-defense is learnable, practical, doesn't need years of training or weapons.
Yeah, I think that's it. Accessible skills plus proactive prevention, plus, importantly, an assertive mindset. Rejecting helplessness.
And it's deliberately positioned as different from complex martial arts for the specific purpose of immediate self-protection.
Exactly. They make that distinction very clear. Judo, Aikido, valuable arts, but maybe not the quickest path to basic defense skills you can use under pressure, according to them.
And ultimately, your attitude, your awareness, how you carry yourself, that can be a deterrent in itself.
That's a huge takeaway. Projecting awareness and readiness can make you seem like a less appealing target. It's not foolproof, of course, but it matters.
Definitely. So a final thought for our listeners. Maybe consider how this approach challenges common ideas about vulnerability. Does hearing about these simple techniques and the focus on assertiveness feel empowering?
Yeah, which of these straightforward ideas resonates most? Is it the low kick, the finger pull, the idea of using a purse weapon, thinking about why something clicks might be a good starting point for, further thought?